All right. Welcome everyone to our webinar put on by the Women in Neonatology. This webinar will be focusing on the joys and challenges of motherhood as a woman in neonatology. I'm Renata Savich. I'm the current chair of Women in Neonatology, and we have a wonderful session planned for you. Caitlin, can you advance the next slide? Doesn't seem to be working for me. Next slide. So these are our panelists. We have 8 women and an additional guest speaker, ranging from having a baby recently to having adult children: Namrita Odekal, Shazia Bombal, Clara Song, Jessica Madden, Dina Hubbard, Christian Damon, Chris Reber, and Marilyn Escobedo. Next slide. So our agenda for the next hour and a half: the webinar will be recorded and posted to WIN website for later viewing. I know some people were not able to be on the webinar right now. We're going to let each of the speakers introduce themselves and go through a brief 5 to 8 minute talk about what their experiences are at their stage of motherhood. And then we're going to have a very robust question and answer session. The feedback we've gotten from all panelists, and then we'll wrap up with a few announcements. Next slide, please. Housekeeping. Use videos so we can see your face unless you're still in your pajamas. Mute your audio. We are going to have question and answer, but instead of the people asking questions verbally, we're going to ask that you use the chat function and type in your questions. You can type it in whenever any speaker is speaking, or at the very end of the session if something comes to you. But please, I encourage you to type in some questions so that we can ask them of our panelists afterwards. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to have the speakers go ahead and start. And just so you have an idea of what we are going to ask the speakers to touch on: when did you have children in your career? What do you think you did really well in managing children? What's been your biggest challenges? What do you wish you could have done for someone with children? They may answer some of these, all of these, and we can also talk about some more of these issues in the question and answer session. So I'm going to have our panelists start, and Caitlin, could you let Namrita go ahead and start talking?
Hi, everybody. I am Namrita Odekal. I will be the most junior member of this conversation, and talking about having a baby. I work in private practice for Envision in North Denver. So when did I have children in my career? Fairly well, so I'll start with saying I'm part of a 2-physician household. My husband is finishing up his training right now. And so we kind of kept pushing it off, thinking that we really just didn't have enough time for each other for about 12 years. And then after his first year of fellowship was wrapping up, and after I was done with my training completely and in my first year of attendinghood, that's when we said, okay, I think that if we have a kid now, it would be like as good as a time as any other time. We're done with the most intensive components of our career, and now is as good a time as any. We even thought about not having kids because we were perfectly happy, but felt that if we didn't, that maybe one day we'd look back and feel like we missed out on stuff. So really our decision for when to have a kid, not knowing how long it's going to take to be successful in getting pregnant and all of those things, was very much a joint decision about when, not just when I would have time, but when he would have time too, because I can control how much I'm putting into it, but I can't control how much he's putting into it, and that needed to be sort of an important component of it. If we'd done it earlier, I think he would have just been completely absent and by no fault of his own, and that would have been incredibly challenging for me, for all of us. What I'm going to skip over what do you think you did really well, because I'm still so new into this, and mostly I just feel like my baby's alive and I have a job, and that's success, and that's my bar right now. What my biggest challenge has been, I found it really hard to leave work at home, at work. When I come home, especially because of my job, I'm on call 24/7 for every time I have a shift. I'm still thinking about my babies if there's an active diagnosis going on, my patient babies, not my own baby. I'm still texting my APP about what to do. And now my baby is 1 year old and he is, um, mobile. He wants attention. He's smiley. He's like interested in whatever you're doing. And I feel very guilty being on my phone, but I still don't know how to manage not doing that and being there completely for my own kiddo and also for the babies that I'm taking care of. And I think ultimately I end up just taking care of the babies in the ICU because my baby's going to be fine. Those babies are in the ICU, and I'm not really sure if that's okay or really how to navigate that. But that's been my biggest challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. And then childcare. Childcare is always a challenge of figuring out how to do that.
786-444. Ajá, 775.
Okay. I think someone maybe needs to just go on mute. So what do you wish you would have done differently? I think the biggest thing I would say is I wish I had taken more maternity leave. I was actually in between jobs when I took maternity leave, which isn't actually maternity leave because no one's paying you, and you're not leaving. I was, I finished one job and I was starting my next one. And I felt like really honored that my medical director said, I support you, have your start date in 3 months, because I was debating between 6 weeks to 3 months. And I later talked to my colleagues and someone told me they took 4 months. And I was like, that didn't even occur to me that I could take 4 months to be with my baby. So I would say, flex that muscle if you can. I wish I had taken a longer time off because it would have been absolutely great. And there was really no reason for me not to. And then lastly, sorry, I have to untangle this computer plug from around my baby's neck. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about having children and is a neonatologist? The first thing I'd say is do it. That's what all of these ladies on this panel told me when I told them we were thinking about having a baby. Do it and you'll find a way. There's so many paths you can take to make it work that you'll figure it out if that's what you want to do. And then the second thing I would say is be comfortable with whatever combination of being a mother and neonatologist it is that you want. I wanted more time for maternity leave, and I would have loved that. I know people who have said they, can't wait to go back. And I think figure out what it is you want and be okay with that. And I don't feel like you have to have a particular answer because that's what you've heard other people say. Because everybody feels differently about it, and that's just a trait of who you are. And you're going to hear a bunch of stories today in here. Everybody's is probably going to be different as far as how they felt about being a mother and being a neonatologist, and just be comfortable with that. I have a male colleague who's older and who has no problem saying, I'm a father first and a neonatologist second. And I don't know if it's because he's more experienced or because he's a man or because I'm just like making excuses for myself, but I still don't even know if I can say that to my boss today, who's a female. Because I don't know why. I'm still working on that. But in my heart of hearts, I feel that way. I'm a mother first and a neonatologist second, and I'm still working on being able to entirely embrace those priorities and also work out practically how to make that actually happen.
Thanks so much. Great comments, great discussion. So Shazia.
Thank you, Renata. So my name is Shazia Bumble. I've been at Stanford for about 16 years now. And my path has taken a couple of little pauses and hiccups here and there. So I had my kids, I have 3 kids. So I do have a toddler of a 3-year-old. I also have a 7 and 8-year-old. And I became pregnant during my second fellowship. I did 2 fellowships. So I was pregnant during my second one and took, that year was just a very memorable year for me because I took the NICU boards during my first trimester and then cardiology board 6 weeks postpartum. So it was a pretty tough year, and I don't remember much about my first year with my first child at all, really. My second one I had, yeah, about 7 years ago, and that one I went between jobs. I actually moved from Southern California up to Northern California, and so I took a pause. And like Narita, I thought, well, I wanted to take some time off, and it was a natural pause for me, but as Narita said, you don't get paid when you take a pause and go between jobs for maternity leave. But I did that, and it was fine. But I thought that because I was going between jobs, and I had some feeler out to Northern California, but I thought this was a chance for me to get a little bit more time at home. I lasted about 3 months or so, and then I went back and I ended up doing part-time and locums type work for about a year or so, which worked out okay for me. And with my kids being young at that time, I was able to spend some more time at home. I still had daycare for my kids at that time because I was in and out with locums, and that honestly was a little bit stressful just because I didn't have stable childcare at that point. So it was dropping kids off intermittently at different places, but it worked okay for that year. And then I had my third one just a couple of years ago, and that one I can't say I remember much from her first 3 years. So I have some things that I think I did okay, and some things that I do have some challenges on. For me, one of the challenges for me was a stable childcare option, and so we have a nanny now, which works well for my career as far as right now for our family life, just having kids in different stages of school and at home. So that worked well for me, and the challenges, I said, childcare was a big challenge, and then also feeling a little guilty about all the kids and not being around for kids as much as I'd like to be.
I can.
My other challenge has been leaving work at work, and as Marina said, that's been a challenge, and my family feels it, and my husband feels it, and so when I'm home doing work at home and not paying attention, that's challenging. So trying to work on efficiency and trying to figure out what can I say no to is always a big challenge for me. The advice to give to children is sort of thinking about it. There's not really a great time for it. It's just whenever it works, it's going to work because you'll make it work. Get help from the village. One of the things that I got early on for advice was to get help wherever you can. So as an example for today, my kids apparently have soccer practice, which I just found out about 10 minutes ago at 5 and 6 o'clock, but I'm at work and staying out till like 7. So we have friends that we've made over the years that are in the neighborhood that are able to help us, but also have a pocket of babysitters and people that we can call on short notice. We don't have family around here, which I know is challenging. And for some people, having family around is great, and I would love to have that. We just don't have that option here. So I think that's mostly what I have to say about things. As far as what the kids think I do or what I do tell them, and I try to make this to help a little bit, is that say, well, I'm helping babies, and so I have to go to the hospital to help the babies. And the kids have responded okay to that. One of the great things too about being Womenatology is I took my son when he was younger to the hospital, and I introduced him to, just before COVID, obviously, but introduced him to one of my colleagues there. And it was a male physician. And after we left, on the way out, my son said to me, "Hey, mommy, I didn't know that boys can be doctors too." I said, "Yeah, they can. It's possible." So I'll be open for questions. I'm really excited to hear about everyone else's experience, and I've learned so much from the women on this panel. So I'm looking forward to hearing their tales.
Ozzy, thanks so much. And you're just an amazing woman, have done such a great job. So Clara, can you tell us about your experiences?
Absolutely. And I love seeing the chat and the comments, so keep them coming because I think that we're experiencing a lot of the same things here. So first of all, I want to say that my full identity for the most of my life was focused on, studying and career. So, for the beginning of my daughter's life, who's 6 years old right now, um, I I didn't really identify first as a mom and then a neonatologist. I always thought it kind of trying to mesh it together, and that doesn't always work unless you got your priorities straight. So I have major imposter syndrome, not at work. Work is like I feel like the easy place, but at home, like I am so grateful to be in the mom community now. Like I'm a mom doc, but I'm just this imposter that like, wait, I do have a kid, right? Yes, I do. It started off um, about 10 or 11 years ago when my boss at the time, who's on, Dr. Marilyn Escobedo, she used to say, you've got to have a dream in order to get to your dream, in order to live your dream. She's going to be able to say this better than me, but you've got to have that first wish and that first dream. And about that time, I really had for my whole life no inclination or desire to become a mom or that expectation. And I thought it would be great, but it was not in the cards for me. I had been divorced a few years before that, and so I thought, oh well. But she gave us these fantastic, wonderful things where we would put our hopes and dreams into and try to work toward them. We do an annual meeting with her. So I just decided, I thought, I have this wonderful nephew, and it was love at first sight for me. He's now 11, but I thought, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to be a mom? So that's how it happened. So I put in a little wish box, baby. And then what happened is 5 years later, here I was with her. And as the other people are saying, my colleagues are saying, there's never a great time, but it's what I feel like it's going to be tough, but it's probably going to be the most fantastic time. It's going to be a great time no matter what. The first few years of her life, she had a nanny, and I was so fortunate to find a fantastic nanny. And in her first year, after kind of like going through the the kind of waves with feeding, I was able to exclusively breastfeed her because my nanny drove her back and forth to me because we live so close to home. And I just thought, oh, I am rocking this mom thing. I can breastfeed her. I don't have to pump very much. I made all her food, with the little organic things and cloth diapered her. And then she was a very early walker. So she started to walk at 9 months and 1 week, which was so surprising. And I thought when people say that, that never happens, but it happens. We didn't have shoes for her. Everything just kind of went to pot after that. She decided she didn't want to breastfeed anymore. And I was like, it kind of felt like she was breaking up with me. Um, and then from there it just got started getting harder and harder to really manage paying attention to her than this like baby. I think many of us, well, at least I was more comfortable with the baby care. So the first year for me was quite memorable and fantastic. But as I said, I did have a really, really supportive boss and work environment and situated at home that way. um, the it started to get a little trickier when you notice that when she went into daycare after her second year. And um we would be that family that dropped her off like first thing in the morning, right when daycare opens, and then I try to like skid in at the very last minute to pick her up. So she was sometimes in daycare most of the days, about 11 to 12 hours a day, which is quite, a lot at that age. um but I think one of the best things about that is that now I can see in her she's quite flexible and she's great at accommodating to new environments. Um, a really big shift in my focus uh, when she was starting to get a little bit older was, and realizing that I wasn't home, was that I think I need to prioritize my time for her. There's often times where we have, our work day, and then, they'll say, "Oh, this special thing such and such is at like 6 or 7 in the morning, or this is going to be at like 6, 7 o'clock at night," whatever it was. And so I made a very conscious effort to protect my morning with her. Because if I've got to be in the office early for whatever meeting at 7 a.m., that means she's got to be dropped off like very, very early and up at like 5:30 in the morning. And so you try to, I think as women, we try to be very accommodating, but then I thought, I've got to just make a hard stop somewhere. Um, and not being involved with mother or childcare, I made a conscious decision that when I was non-service, that I would go pick her up by 5:30, 6 o'clock. And so that is one thing that I think I would recommend is, or that worked for me at least. Um, the last few years, I had really thought about something that one of my older colleagues had done back at OU. She's a very senior, fantastic doctor named Ann Laudiver. And she had always told us she has 3 kids, that she took the first 7 years of her career off after fellowship just to focus on her kids. And then she came back. So, and now she has had this long flourishing career in academics. So it's we won't get the time back, I kept thinking with her, and that I focused on after about 3 or 4. And I thought, well, when she goes to school, she's going to spend the majority of her day not with us. Not that she's not doing that already, but I don't get to see her a whole lot. So I made a very conscious and intentional decision to move over to private practice from academics, where really the schedule and environment um, was more amiable to spending longer chunks of time with her, so I could be more involved in her my daughter's life. My current boss and my current work environment is absolutely phenomenal. And they're if I wouldn't have moved for another position, if we can put it that way. Very understanding about, being a working mom and having young kids. The other reason why I made that decision was because my daughter had speech delay up until about 4 years, and she still has quite a bit of speech delay and some other, sensory processing issues. And so she has a special educational program at school. So I wish I had listened to my gut a little bit more, because she did qualify for regional services when she was 2, but I noticed, as physicians, I think we try not to physician or doctor our families, but I knew that there was something not quite right going on, not terribly wrong, but just not quite right. And her physician, her pediatrician, and I kept getting the reassurances, and I kept thinking something's not quite right. So she's gone through multiple tests, and yeah, it's not quite right. It's not quite wrong. It's not terribly wrong, but it's just not quite right. And so I would have been able to intervene perhaps a little bit sooner. Um, but I'm not the kind of I think where I cut a lot of corners. I'm not the kind of mom who does, the post family photos that are really beautiful on the beach and then sends them out as Christmas cards. We've had not one family photo ever professionally taken. But I do have, see, this I get comments on a lot. Those are all just like, taken from my computer and Instagram. And then I just slap things together so that they're memorable for her. But I just kind of do what I can, and I think we're all trying to do what we can. So this total being a working mom on the fly thing is true. There's not a lot of prep for us, and I am the last person to take advice from. It's just, what I did. My philosophy is life and limb. If we've got our lives and we've got our limbs, we're doing okay, and then everything else I can kind of figure out and work out, and it's no problem. But we can fix it. So that's that.
Thanks for your insight, Clara. Jessica, we'd like to hear from you.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I've loved hearing all of your stories so far. I am a neonatologist at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital in Cleveland, and I have 4 kids. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old who thinks she's as old as her older siblings. So I had my oldest when I was a pediatric resident. Number 2 was my 2nd year of fellowship. I also did fellowship at Rainbow, where I am now. My 3rd, I had the last day of my fellowship. I found out you can get pregnant if you are breastfeeding and also on a progestin-only birth control pill. So just so But yeah, she was due the end of June, and she came 36 weeks, and my fellowship was done at that point. And then I had my fourth as an attending. And I would say that that was probably the easiest pregnancy and maternity leave and everything to navigate, not doing it while I was in training. I definitely have no disclaimer that I have really anything figured out at all. I think that it's important in terms of what to try to do well is to realize that you have to take your own pathway with all of this and write your own story. So the choices I have made several different neonatology career jumps through the years, and a lot of it has been in terms of what I felt I've had to do for my family. My first job out of fellowship, I had wanted to stay in academics. I envisioned a clinical research career, and that's what I thought I was going to be. I wanted to be a neonatal outcomes follow-up doctor, like Betty Vore or Maureen Hack. Instead, because I had so many little babies at the time I finished, I took a private practice job in a community level 3 NICU in the upper Midwest. And it was somewhere where I really could focus on shift work. I could go into work, take care of my patients, come home, and not have to worry about deadlines and anything at all. I worked on service one block of days. So I do Monday through Friday every 4 to 5 weeks. And then in between those 3 to 4 weeks I was off service, I could be home with them during the day. Outside of when I was post-call, which I did a lot of weekends and nights in-house to be able to have that schedule. That worked really well until my kids were in school. So when my kids are in school and they're in school Monday through Friday, when I'm home, it just didn't make much sense for me and our family anymore to have that schedule. And so I and I also missed academics too. So I made that jump back into the academic world so that my schedule is more in line with their school schedule, and so that I no longer have to not see them. I mean, there were times, if you think, I'm sure so many of us are in that situation, like you leave for work at 7 in the morning, and if you're on a 24-hour in-call shift, you don't see them until the next evening, like whatever, 28 or 30 hours later. And that was just really hard for me. So now I work technically 0.75 FTE. I'm involved in our fellowship program. And I also have been kind of making my own pathway in terms of I've opened up a local newborn medicine home visiting practice. So I kind of spend that other 0.25 FTE of my time building my own practice and business. And what I really like about that is it's super flexible and I can work my own schedule around that. So I don't know that that's going to be for the long haul what I'm doing. But again, I find like every few years I sit there like, okay, what's going to work best? Where are we in the life cycle? And what can I change? And am I happy? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Challenges, there are so many of them. And as my colleagues have already alluded to, I have and it's a work in progress. I've always had a really hard time reaching out for help. Like I'm just one, and I'm sure we're wired similarly, so many of us, where I'm like, I can do this all, I've got it. I can do this. I can make cookies for school. I can show up at every soccer game, and you can't, you just can't do any of that. And so I've gotten so much better about saying no to things, and it feels so good. Like my daughter is in high school soccer, and they have this crazy thing where there's soccer moms, there's these moms, and you coordinate snacks for the team and meals. And I was just like, I'm going to have nothing to do with this. I'm going to send in bagged Fritos, and this is it. And it was just so liberating because everybody knows you're a physician and busy. So that's fine. And then the other thing with reaching out for help is I learned it pretty early on when we had just moved to my first attending job and I was pregnant with my fourth. We didn't really know very many people in our new town. And my husband was out of town and I got injured actually. So I was home alone taking care of the kids. I was pregnant and we didn't live near family. And I was just like, I don't know what we're going to do. I have no idea. So I literally went to my daughter's preschool list of parents and I called the first one, hi, I need help. And she came. And brought me to the emergency room, took my kids. I didn't even really know this mom, and helped me. And this was like 11 years ago, and she's one of my best friends now. So it was just like being vulnerable, kind of desperate, kind of vulnerable. But I learned since then to never put myself in that situation of not having like a really good support network. And then guilt. I feel guilty. Mom guilt creeps in all of the time. Continually feeling like, gosh, like, am I shortchanging everybody? And what I found helps a ton with that, and is having people to talk to. When I find that I'm just feeling overwhelmed and need to talk to a therapist, I do. And I've also found it so important to have like my own outlets too, because we're so busy with our patients and our families and all the other responsibilities. So for a really, really long time, I used to run. That was my outlet. And now I am doing ballet class. And so I just have something a couple times a week that's for me. And I hope that role modeling that for my kids helps. So what would I do differently? Probably a lot of things. I saw something in the chat. One thing that has been really hard returning to academics is that, at least where I currently am, that first 6 to 8 years of my career that I was in private practice didn't count for anything. And I never even thought during that time period, I was doing academic type of things like teaching NRP and curriculums, but I wasn't keeping track of anything. I had no idea like how important that was going to be. So if I can go back as a young attending, I would have been like keeping my CV and probably trying to keep my foot more in the academic door than I knew. I just didn't know to do that. So things you are doing in private practice actually do count, but you have to be able to have like a paper trail and show that you were being productive in other ways. So I think that's about it. I feel like I've been rambling all over, but I'm so looking forward to seeing what everybody else has to say too. And you can reach out to me if you have any questions at any time.
Thanks, Jessica. That's great. All right, I'm going to say one thing. All of us, we need to lose the guilt, okay? Dina, take it away.
Well, I'm going to start with guilt. Actually, I should just say ditto to everything Jess said. I think it's very clear that we are mid-career working moms and, just kind of choosing our battles and making it through one day at a time. But there are so many things that you all really don't even need to hear me, because I could just share experiences based on what everybody has said already. I had my first daughter, Emily, when I was a fourth year medical student, and that was intentional, and we planned it, and luckily didn't take too long to get pregnant. And we thought we were prepared, and we knew nothing. And she really rocked our world. So I wasn't convinced to do that whole thing again for 9 years, to have Reese. And I was in my second year of attending Hood. And so very different relationship with both of those girls. And they're both wonderful in different ways. So all of that to say, there is, as has been said, there's no one perfect time. There's no one way of doing things that's right for everyone. So no perfect time. Whenever works for you is great. So Emily, because I was in training through most of her early years, similar to some of the things that have been said, she's very independent. I remember she was 4 and we saw her getting milk out of the fridge on her own, and that just kind of sums it up. She's very independent, and I try to make myself feel better by all the things that I missed doing for her. It made her a very independent, strong lady. So I really love that about her. And it's interesting because I think I was more available with Reese. She needed me much more in a different way. So I feel like I was a different mom to both of them, which I think just with it, age span is common. 10 and 12 years between my older siblings. And so I know my relationship with my parents is very different, but all beautiful in their own way. So I have a lot of guilt, and I'm working through that. But some of the good things, again, I think my daughters see that I'm an independent, strong mom. I remember Emily also saying that oh, I didn't know boys could be doctors. And so that was really fun. She saw ECMO and talked about ECMO when she was little again, before COVID. And I feel like they're overall nice human beings. So even though I have missed more than I would care to admit, and I would definitely do things different, they are good human beings, and I think they see me as the authentic person that I am, that I don't have it all together all the time, even when I try to pretend. And so being that vulnerable, and letting them see and learn from that, I think is very good. Obviously, we've had opportunities to travel and do cool things that we might not have been able to otherwise because of my work. So I think teaching them that as well. Biggest challenge, again, I would say, is the mommy guilt. Mine started with breastfeeding did not go well, and I felt like I was the worst pediatrician and then the worst neonatologist, and really took a long time to work through that, which is why I feel so strongly about, while we all know the science and the benefits of breast milk, that is not the only way we identify success as a mother. And so I like to use my story for that. Time and being present, like truly present, even when you're physically present, is something that I learned that I was not doing well. Even when I was physically present, I wasn't mentally present. And to the point of having teenagers, you know, they seem like they want their independence and their freedom, and they do, but also it's a time when they really need you. And I think somebody put it in the chat too, but teenagers are a lot like infants and toddlers, and they need you, even if they don't want to admit it. They need you in a different way. So I I kind of wish that I would have been even more intentional when Emily was a teenager, and hopefully I'll do that a little bit better with Reese. I think letting go of perfection is really a struggle for me every single day. But similar to what Clara said, with my job, I know how to measure that success, and my identity has been tied up in being a physician. And as a mom, I know that I'm not perfect, and I fail every day. And so sometimes it's easy to pour into work because I know what's expected and I know what it takes. And there's just very different with children. But I think letting go of perfection, the house doesn't have to be like on a Pottery Barn magazine, and the birthday parties don't have to be the most awesome birthday party ever. I know during COVID, with Reese, she has a July birthday, and so things had opened up a little bit, but what we ended up doing was an outside kind of scavenger hunt and a bike ride. And it was probably the most simple thing. And I think we made homemade cupcakes or something. And that was one of her favorite memories. So letting go of the perfection, I think, is really important in enjoying the journey along the way. So we're all doing the best that we can. My bits of advice, for what they're worth, is that to always remember what is most important to you. I know my first job, I chose that because I said, I may never be known in neonatology, but I will always be Emily's mom. And so that's what that's one of the reasons I joined the wonderful private practice group that I did. And then when I went back to academics, it was also because at that phase of my life, I needed something different. And so it's always okay to make a change, and having someone keep you accountable, so that when it's family time, like I'm saying, I'm not going to spend more than an hour on the computer at a time, that Reese will tell me, she's like, okay, mom, it's time to get the computer up. So getting our family to help with that. And lastly, I'll just say the village. I finally found my people. They're not physician moms, but they're those people that we all pitch in, and I feel like I take a lot more than I give, but when I can, I do, and they take me for who I am. So I'm learning so much, and it's very validating to hear all these wonderful things from you all. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my thoughts are, my kids are in their 30s. I would have had this panel when I was just starting out. It would have made such a difference. John, can you help us and tell us all about what's going on with you and your kids and your experiences?
Christiana, I think
Christiana?
You're on mute.
Yeah.
I noticed you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm Christiane Dammann. I work as a neonatologist in Boston at Tufts University, and I had my two girls, now 23 and 21, so almost the second one is almost an adult, during my fellowship. So the first one 10 days into my fellowship, starting a fellowship in a different country, in a different world, so to speak, and the second one in my third year of fellowship. What I think I did really well, or maybe okay, in managing children and career is that I kind of have the fortune to have a husband who viewed my career advancement as similar important. He also is a pediatrician, important as his own, and helped really take care of our kids. When we came to the US, he gave up the clinical work and went into research, and that helped us quite a bit because he specifically in the first years spent more time with them than I ever did because I had to do my calls and my night shifts and weekends. What worked really well for us was having au pairs in the earlier years and then later nannies. And I kept my nanny who really grew into the family and who became a second mom to my girls during their teenage years. She kind of started helping us with the household. She even stayed overnight. It was a tiny bit more expensive than you can think of, but it was helpful because when my husband was out of town, she stayed overnight, even during the teenage years when you worry a lot about your kids. We also took the kids to a lot of places and conferences due to the fact that we traveled a lot, and they enjoyed it, and they kind of are used to kind of traveling around the world, which is great. I had the fortune to have my own funded lab for about 20 years, which gave me a lot of flexibility when compared to a clinician working really kind of stringent hours. But it also leads to the fact that I did more nights and weekends, not only clinical, but also with all of my submission deadlines during vacation holidays, they don't stop at that time point. So it has good and bad parts to it, but definitely made life a tiny bit more flexible overall. What had been the biggest challenges with teenagers? I think I saw it in the chat already. Small kids are really great if you find a tender, loving care nanny or a person who's taking care of them. It really, and that was what a colleague of mine told me when I was pregnant, it really helps, but teenagers need you. You cannot have, unless you have a nanny like I have a nanny who is a second mom who could kind of help with that. But the mental health issues, the school drama, this collides really with our crazy work hours. And most often when you or your partner is not at home, and the teenagers, they have different time rhythms. They need you when they need you. They don't kind of set a time when you are at home. They really kind of call you up wherever you are, and they need your attention. And so it is always difficult to feel good. And I think my big challenges were that I never felt good enough as a mother, as a wife, as a clinician, as a researcher, because I tried to share kind of all parts in one person and do my best, but I probably did not as well as a mother who could focus on being a mother, a wife who could focus on being a wife, a clinician who could focus on being a clinician, or a researcher who could focus on being a researcher. So it is very as mentioned, very difficult to really kind of go in alignment with the rhythm of teenagers, and finding out about mental health kind of issues in these ages. We live in a suburb of Boston, where lots and lots of parents, rich parents, and very educated parents are kind of living around us. But how often did I hear the question, did I fail parenthood if my child is not able to go to Harvard or other high-ranked colleges? So there is a lot of pressure on the parents, which kind of is then tickling down to the kids. And we had so many teenage suicides in our school district. It is heartbreaking to see that. And my own experience with mental health, and my younger daughter who had a eating disorder, I think I know very well all the mental health facilities in the Boston area. And at one point, I really did the very big step and took FMLE, which was financially covered. It was a big step for me, and it really kind of led to the fact that I had to struggle with myself, with my emotions, while being at home taking care of my daughter and leaving work for that overall. Learning to not only rely on your mentors in your institution is a big thing I have learned over time. In addition to what has already been mentioned, learning to say no. In the earlier career steps, I really couldn't do that, but I have learned to kind of do that more. And I've also learned to reach out to people and ask for help and get some advice from specifically women in our field. They are out there, and they have learned. And it is very interesting if I think back the first couple of times when our group, our women in neonatology group, put our heads together, we are sitting in the same boat. We are going through the same difficulties, and we can learn so much from each other. When I'm asking myself the questions, what I would have done differently or better, I would have liked to spend more time with my children when they were younger, and maybe even do some part-time work. When they were small, we moved twice across the Atlantic. We had no child care when we returned to the US setup, and it was kind of a struggle, not having parents around, and I think specifically in the school system is totally new for me, because I grew up in a different part of the world, and specifically during the teenage years, the high school, middle school, high school, and then even the college years. It's so unfamiliar for us that even my older daughter, she pushed us away. She told us, don't talk to me while I'm applying for colleges. You have no idea what I'm going through. I do that myself. It was great, but it feels kind of very as a failure for being a parent, trying to be with them and help them to be successful. So being in a different culture surrounding is not making it easy. Being so far away from family doesn't make it easy. And a different being in a different system, in a different culture, is not as easy as it could be. If you ask me what I would like to also kind of would have liked to do better, is to be more fashionated, like Clara is. I mean, I'm always impressed how good she looks. So if I could do that, I would have, or if I would have done that, I would have probably felt a tiny bit better. Tiny bit of advice I would like to share is to really be easy on yourself. As mentioned so many times, you're all good parents, you're all good moms, you're all great clinicians, researcher, whatever you do, but try to spend some time for your own wellness and happiness, because you have to take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much. Chris, can you give us some comments? Love to hear from you.
Sure. So first, I ditto to everything that has been said, and being in touch and networking with this incredible group of women and all of you around the country is my first word of advice, because we're all in this together. So, and that's partly why I love our network in neonatology. So I was at Nationwide Children's Hospital for 30 years, and just in July transitioned to Texas Children's Hospital as the chief of neonatology. And my kids had a big role in that, and I'll discuss why in just a second. But I got pregnant when I was a fellow and was on bed rest when I transitioned to being an attending, cried because nobody seemed to recognize that I was now an attending. So I remember crying on bed rest because there weren't like balloons and lots of parties going on over my transition. Had my second baby during my junior faculty time. Currently, my son is, and stop doing the math, my son is in his master's program in biomedical engineering, and my daughter is a junior in college in a Capital University and plays soccer. So my career has evolved from anywhere from scientist, administrator, clinician. So I have experience all, and there absolutely are good and bad with all of those pieces and parts. There are advantages and disadvantages in every single one of those, and there's not a right or wrong answer as to what your job should look like and what's easier. So I will tell you that my husband was very old school. He was a police detective, and when I hired somebody to clean our house, he said, "Don't tell anybody. This is embarrassing that we need somebody to clean our house." Okay, I'm showing my age. Hopefully there aren't men out there like that anymore. But anyway, but he has transitioned, right? Even he has transitioned, and he was one of the reasons that I took this job, because he said, "Chris, I'm tired of you working for men. You need to go, and you need to run a division." So even our husbands and our significant others can evolve. And I want to acknowledge that as mothers, we also take care of our significant others and help them to evolve as people. I have benefited from feeling all of the things that each and every one of you alluded to, but now have kids who are grown adults who do say to me on a regular basis, "Mom, we are really proud of what you do. You are our role model," and you all will experience that at some point. And I will tell you, I went through so much guilt when my kids were growing up. And I tell this story often because my daughter would literally just have absolute fits about the fact that I wasn't going to be home Christmas morning. She said, "What? How can you not be home Christmas morning? Every other mother's home Christmas morning. You're not home Christmas morning. How can this be?" And I laugh about this because she wants to be an obstetrician, right? So despite all of that angst about me not being home Christmas mornings, clearly, she now sees the light and recognizes that even though she's not going to be home Christmas mornings, that there's a lot to say about having a job that where you help others. And I think she gets it now. So I think that's really exciting. I ditto to what everyone said. It is quality time. Any opportunity you have to be with your kids, I would take advantage of it. It doesn't matter if you're home 24/7. I used to have that guilt of I'm not home baking cookies for my kids after school. But I really took advantage of the time when they were playing sports, that one-on-one time on the 8-hour drive to the tournaments, letting their friends ride with us so I could hear them talking in the back when they were teenagers and understanding what was happening. That was very insightful, by the way. I recommend that to any of you who have that opportunity. And I hear some of my colleagues complain about having to drive distances to soccer tournaments, et cetera. And those were precious times to me. I took advantage of that quality time to really hear what my kids were talking about or talk one-on-one with them. So I found that quality was the best thing. Some of the biggest challenges, of course, are being tired and bringing work home with you. So I really worked hard on finding ways not to bring work home with me and trying to relax before I went home so that I wasn't walking in the door about ready to explode. And I think that was really important so that I could be there for my kids and for my husband. I think advice, let me just say, I think neonatology is an incredible field. I had friends who went into, say, general pediatrics part-time, and they used to say to me, "How can you be a neonatologist? How can you be a mom and a neonatologist?" And the reality was, I don't think I really missed any important events for my kids because my partners were always happy to cover for me. So if my kids were in a school play or they had some sport event or a partner was always happy to cover for me. And I would advocate for having partners who are willing to cover for you. So I didn't miss those things. And if you think about your colleagues who are part-time pediatricians, they can't walk away from their patients if they have them scheduled, even if they are only working a couple of days a week. So I have found neonatology to be an incredible field. I would say definitely keep your kids engaged. I always took my kids to those neonatal reunions where you get to see the kids running around that you took care of in the NICU. And I think that was really meaningful. They got to see those kids and I could say, this is what this baby looked like when I took care of this baby. And then they hear the parents saying, Dr. Reber, you did this for my baby. And I think that really was impactful to them. So they saw that I really was making a difference in people's lives. And then now, like I said, my daughter wants to be an obstetrician, which is pretty cool, right? So clearly, somehow, she doesn't hate what I do. And so I'll have to talk to her about obstetrics, but that's another story. And then my son's in the sciences. So I think it's pretty cool. So there will be a day when you'll be able to look back and your kids will say, hey, Mom, I really think it's cool what you do. It just takes a while to get there, but you got to let go of the guilt. And ditto to let go of the perfect birthday parties. I talk about, I tell my kids, I'm like, remember that incredible birthday party I threw for you? And they're like, no, Mom, we don't remember. So let it go. Just let it go is what I say. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate your comments. So Marilyn, can you tell us what it's like to have gone through all these years and now have adult children?
Well, okay. I feel like a dinosaur here because when I started out, and I had my children when I was 32 and 35 and on the faculty, because it was really impossible to have children during training and a residency because you were on call in-house every second or third night. You were expected to be there until 6 o'clock the next evening. There was just no way. One of the women that was in my internship class dropped out because she had a baby, and another hid her pregnancy for 6 months because it was just unacceptable. And when I interviewed for medical school, they asked, "Are you going to have children?" And I said, "Of course not." So there are big changes that have occurred in terms of the support of women, plus the fact that there are other women that we can talk to, like in this group. But we still haven't gone far enough, for sure. Look at all the problems that we all have, that we are currently having with childcare. What did I do well managing my children and career? One thing that really helped was that I had a husband that was not a physician, so that he was at home at night. So if I had to leave to go to the hospital, I didn't have to worry about childcare. But I didn't have such a thing as a nanny, and those things were impossible in Texas, at least, where I spent 20 years. Oh, I didn't say that, did I? I was a division chief for 20 years in Texas and 17 in Oklahoma, and my children were always an important part of my life. But I think I did decide when they were younger that meals and bedtime were the important things, and that I was always there for breakfast and dinner. And I often came home and took care of them, and then went back to the hospital or to do work, even for research or writing or whatever. I remember one time I took a baby, my son, who is the youngest baby, and on a Saturday morning, and went into the office and to write something that was due. And my husband said, "Marilyn, are you going to get rich or are you going to get famous? And why do you do this?" And I thought, well, it's really because I love it and I want to do this. And I think that defines all of us in our work. In terms of, I identified with the birthday parties because I would have birthday parties. The birthday parties almost never occurred on the date of the birthday. They were frequently a week or so different depending on my schedule. So the children got used to that. We had good birthday parties, but they just weren't on birthdays. I did take my children to the NICU and show them what I did, especially on Sundays. We would stop and pick up donuts for the house staff and the nurses. And the children would, my kids would carry them in, and then they would stay in the office eating donuts while I made rounds, and then I would put them in gowns and show them the babies. And of course, this wasn't during the COVID, and I always did it very discreetly. But so my children did know what I was doing when I wasn't at home, and I think that's important that they understand that you are helping other people, and many of the other of us have mentioned that already. I think my biggest challenge was self-care and social life, both of which I neglected entirely. And I think that work and family were all that I focused on. So I wish I'd hired more help and earlier. Kind of like Chris, it was like, how many people do you need to hire to pick up the kids and deliver them and do before school care and after school care and clean the house once in a while? I clean my house much too long. So I would say hire help, hire early, and hire a lot, because it's really worth it. And another thing that has been brought out in this panel is the ability to talk to and rely on peers, women who are in our same situation. And I think that has grown over the past few years and is very important. But now to address the thing about how you deal with adult children, I think that the object of parenthood is really to raise a responsible, caring, capable adult. And I think that is, if we keep that in mind, it really helps when they refuse to brush their teeth or engage you in a battle of wills when they're a teenager. And it does pay off in the long run to think about what kind of an adult is going to be at the end of this 20-year adventure that we embarked upon. So I think as adults, and I have 4 grandchildren. So each of my children is a parent of 2 children now, and I see how well they handle their children, and I see some echoes of how I raised them. So I think this is one of the rewards of raising your kids, is to see how they turn out as adults. But I think even as adults, we need to be there when they need us. And just as Christiana said, for teenagers and young adults, you need to be able to respond at the time that they need you. It's not like toddlers when you can manage their time. So I think your adult children are going to have health issues. They're going to have new babies. They're going to have job losses and changes. And I think we just need to show up. But we do need to refrain from giving too much advice, because we're used to solving problems and giving directions as neonatologists. And we need to just listen and help them reflect on what they need to do, because they don't really need our direction and our specific advice anymore. And I think another piece of advice I would give is to love the people they marry or their significant other. Love is a verb, and we can be intentional about that. We didn't marry perfect spouses, for sure. And I think most women have complained to other women about the deficiencies of their spouse, and despite the fact that we love them. And the same with the spouses of your children. I think you need to love them, and just as you do your children. And I think you will support their relationship as well as your relationship with them. My only negative advice is don't lend them money. without some agreement about how it's going to be paid back or whether it's a gift or a loan. So I think that's one thing that one should be careful about is financial help when you have adult children. And then as you get older, let them help you. Relax and allow yourself not to be in charge for once. And just enjoy them because that's what it's all about. You raise these children to be adults that you enjoy being with and that you value and yet you respect. I think our kids turn out pretty well despite our working long hours and the absences that we have because of our professional obligations. And our children see what we do and they value it, and they are better people for it, I think. So despite all this questioning that we do of ourselves, in the end, we really are pretty good mothers, after all. So that I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Such wise words. And now we're going to hear from a special guest speaker, Susan, for a few minutes about a book she's written and about her experiences as being a mother neonatologist. Susan?
Hey, is that reverberating? Oh dear. How about now? Is that better? Okay, good. I have written a book about everything you guys have been talking about. I was a neonatologist for 34 years. I retired about 5 years ago, and I wrote a book called So Many Babies, My Life Balancing a Busy Medical Career and Motherhood. And I did it to tell the story of what it's like to work in a NICU. And I also did it to tell my motherhood stories, the challenges that I met, the trials that I dealt with. The NICU moms used to always say, oh, you're a doctor, you should have everything perfect. Your kids are awesome, right? And I would go, no, my kids are, I have the same kind of troubles you do. Everything that has been said in this panel today is so typical for physician mothers and actually for working mothers in general. We all need good childcare. We all need a longer maternity leave. We're a little bit perfectionistic and we all need to kind of loosen up on scheduling everything. I also changed my job several times off and on during my career for my kids. First half of my career was academic and the second half private practice. The mom guilt is a big deal. I agree with the person who said to ditch it. Tell yourself every day that you're doing the best job you can do, because neonatology is a hard specialty and being a working mom is no piece of cake sometimes. I devoted a whole chapter in my book to being a good enough mother. I think we all want to be a perfect mother, and it took me about 30 years to convince myself that I had been a good enough mother. All my challenges are in the book. All my advice is in my book. I would invite people to check it out and read it and see what you think. I have been having a great time talking with people about what it was like to be a neonatologist. But the main reason I wrote the book was to be reassuring to other working moms, especially young neonatologists who are coming up, because we've all been through the same challenges, talking to each other, sharing experiences. This panel, this is the way to really help each other and support each other. One more little thing is self-care. A couple of people mentioned that, having an outlet to keep yourself healthy. Over the years, if you don't have exercise, hobbies, friends, music, you're going to burn to a crisp. And depending on what your schedule is, it's really important to take care of yourself. I don't care whether you're 40 or 65. So the best advice us dinosaurs can give you is to take care of yourself while you're going along, and you'll be a much better mother. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we're all looking forward to looking at the book. I'm going to now spend the last 15, 20 minutes or so of this webinar asking Krithika and Linda to scroll through the chat box and ask some questions of our panelists. So Linda and Krithika, do you have any questions you would like to ask the panelists?
I can go first. Hi, everyone. This is Krithika. I think I would not be amiss to say that this was just an awesome, the best 90 minutes that possibly I have spent in my life as a neonatologist and a mom. Most of the questions were actually answered by either the panelists or by other neonatologists attending the webinar today. So our job is much easier. I think Linda would agree. The two questions that I could jot down among the many comments that were not addressed, which the panelists can probably address, one was related to part-time work. So this question asked if doing part-time work hurts academic careers or career transitions if one takes it up earlier on in their career for family reasons. What do the panelists think about the impact of part-time work long-term in one's career?
I'd like to help answer that question. Can you hear me? Yes. Is that I think that I faced this as a division chief, that I think that you need to, that if you want to stay in academics particularly, that you need to plan plan your career, so that if you plan to take to reduce your time, if you want to reduce your time while you are with young children, I think you need to talk to your division chief, talk to the boss, and say, this is what I want to do, that I want to cut back, I want to have some time to spend, call it part-time or reduced time or reduced responsibilities while my children are little, but then I want to gear up my lab, or I want to really go full time into this research. But I think it really helps to talk about it as a plan, and not to say, well, I'm just going to escape by going, by saying, well, I'm just going to drop out of this that I really want to do, but I don't know how to do it at this time. So I think it's good to plan it and to discuss it as a career trajectory with the person that is a division chief at the time. I don't know if that helps, but I think going part-time is you really have to be intentional about how you're planning your career. Otherwise, it is difficult to re-enter academics. Or who was it that, I think it was Jessica, who said that she lost a lot of the credit that she should have had with the time that she was part-time, and she could have and she really could have made use of that in her career.
Yeah, I did. And I think that if I could definitely go back, I think getting that advice that Marilyn just gave everybody, like when you're at that juncture point of even being in fellowship and trying to figure out what your path is going to be, I just felt like at that time I didn't have, enough women ahead of me that had so many small kids at that stage of the life cycle to be able to even talk about it with. So hopefully through this networking, we're able to, connect and help the younger generation more.
That's awesome. Thank you for weighing in, Jess and Marilyn. The brave lead the way, I guess. And if you don't know the way, or it doesn't seem like there's no solution, you reach out to someone for help, like Marilyn. So the other question that popped up in the chat was, how do we convince or push our divisions and or organizations for changes, knowing that these challenges exist for neonatologists who are mothers and have families? How do the panelists think we can deal with this, especially if you have a male or males in the leadership positions?
I'll chime in here. I don't have any discrete examples, but I have thoughts on this because um I did write in the chat, I was an older mom when I had Liana, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of other mom friends, or at least, working mom friends who had new babies, at the age of like 41. I was pushing 42. So when I had my daughter, it seemed like all of these moms and colleagues like kind of came out of the woodwork. As I said, like I'm now a part of this like fantastic group, and people can talk to me about things and I can talk to them about things. And so I just learned so much. I was really lucky also that first year when I was at home on maternity leave, the physician moms group came on. It was maybe just a few months old. So, breastfeeding in the middle of the night, there's nobody there to talk to, there's just nobody there. It's just you. So I would end up scrolling through those conversations quite a bit, and I learned a ton. So as a suggestion, I haven't been in a position where I felt like I had to fight for something or convince anybody to be understanding about this, because, I had such wonderful bosses and mentors as I do now even. Um, but I wonder if we just all became a little bit more transparent among ourselves, because one voice or two voices may not be able to process or push change forward. But if we come together as a group and come up with really sensible solutions, not saying like, well, this is the problem, but actually coming up with our own solutions for ourselves and our needs, then we may be able to have better listening opportunities from the opposite side. I just know for myself, as the majority of my career, I was, single and just partnered, but not without any kids or not having any intention for that. And having Liana has changed me phenomenally to the better, to be a better human being. I learn from her every day. I'm so much more empathetic to all mothers in general, working mothers, mothers in the NICU. I really thought I had that understanding before, but I didn't. So just having the conversations, I think, is so important.
I would like to echo what Clara just said. I think it is a process which we probably have to take on together. I think the time is ripe for doing it together, and I think there is more, even in our male colleagues, there is more openness because they see that this is needed. If you look into the workforce of in pediatrics and specifically in neonatology, it's about 75% are female, and all are in a younger category. So we will kind of hopefully be able to do it together. And I agree that one voice is kind of only going for so long, but if we put the heads together, I think we can have a good impact on it. It will be a long, rocky road. It will not be similar what we tell our parents when they have their kids in the NICU. There are ups and downs, but I think if we push for it and if we work on it, we can do so much. So if you're interested to join the advocacy task force, the WIN advocacy task force, this is exactly what we are working on: paid parental leave, workplace needs, benefits, parents, breastfeeding, all of that is so important, and we need to speak up and we need to fight for it together.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, be a part of WIN. There is definitely a power. I'm so honored to be part of this group, but this is a wonderful leadership group and networking group, and together we can really make things happen. So I think it's a very exciting time. Definitely there are changes that need to be made. And then I threw it in the chat, but I just wanted to comment about our colleagues that struggle with infertility. And I think that's something that our profession, we need to talk about because, I've heard some women physicians say, I wish somebody would have talked to me about, banking eggs and things like that for later on. And that's not something that I know very much about, but I think we need to support our colleagues with that, and then as well as our female colleagues that may have children or pets or other things that are important. I know today we're talking specifically about mothering children, but that looks differently for so many people. So WIN's a great place to support you no matter what.
Well, and I will say, and to from what you just said, Dina, the next step too is also taking care of our parents, right? So many of us now, our kids are grown, and now we're starting to take care of our parents. So I think also we need to be understanding of each other as we are doing that, and we're often the primary caregiver for our parents who are elderly as well.
Points. Linda, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask that you saw in the chat, or just questions you wanted to ask?
Sure. I just had to say how much I really enjoyed each of the speakers, and to thank everyone. I just feel we're just so fortunate to have such incredible colleagues and role models and moms, and I really have always valued this group and the individuals in the group, but this just gave a whole new dimension, and it was really terrific. And I also have enjoyed so much of what has been discussed in the chat, and I'm hoping that the recording will also record the chat comments and suggestions, because I think there's so many great insights here. I was really intrigued by the commonality of the challenges and the guilt and the efforts to achieve work-life balance, and the myth of it all. And sorry about that phone going off. Just the various support systems that people have come up with, the au pairs, the nannies, the spouse that works at home, other family, and yet how irreplaceable mom is. And not only as the children are young, but as they get older, teens and college age. So my questions, though, revolve around the mythology that we've all heard repeatedly. One is work-life balance, and I think a lot of that has been demystified in this conversation, that all we can do is to try to achieve our best in work-life balance, and to remember to have some time to look after ourselves as well. But the other thing, the other two myths that I struggle with, one is the myth of pay equity. Now, I do think we're moving in a better direction with regards to that, but I don't think we still have likely achieved true pay equity in our field, in medicine in general. And one of the things that is the myth that I have encountered is being told that the reason women are paid less is they're just not asking for better pay. And so I would welcome some discussion on that, because my experience has been that even when you ask, you don't necessarily get it. And then the second one is this whole question of learning to say no. I think the whole question of how to say no, when to say no, to whom to say no, is very challenging, and I would really welcome the panelists' thoughts on both compensation and how we say no, and when it's appropriate to do so.
Well, when to say no, I think is a big question that should be discussed, Linda, because I think when you're young in your career, you actually need to say yes a lot in order to know what opportunities are out there, and also to learn what you really have a passion for, and also to show people what you can do. So I think it is difficult to make that choice about what should I say yes to in order to make the best of those opportunities and those and that may come your way, and yet not get overwhelmed. So I think we have to be very careful about what we say yes to and what we say no to, and think about how it fits into that plan. That as Clara said, I always said, you have to have a dream in order to have a dream come true. So what's to make sure that your choices are in concert with that dream. If you want to be a laboratory scientist, then you shouldn't volunteer to be the head of the junior student education program. That doesn't fit. But on the other hand, if you want to be a physician scientist, should you be on the IRB committee or something like that? And you may find that you want to do that for just a short time. So I think it's important to say yes to the things that fit into your career plan, and say no to the things that don't offer that opportunity. So that's what I would say about saying yes and saying no. And as you get your interests focused, then you can say no and yes to the things that it gets easier as time goes on. That's what I would say about it.
Can I very quickly?
Can I make a comment about saying no in private practice and saying yes? Whenever I said yes in private practice, I had to do things in my personal time off. I didn't get paid time off. And that was a big mistake, because my practice, when I worked for the AAP, when I worked for the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, I had to do everything on my own time. And I think if you're going to say yes, especially in private practice, you need to get protected time. You need to get paid. Otherwise, you should say no, because you'll just be doing everything for free. In academics, it's a little bit easier because it's part of your salary, but in private practice, it's not like that.
Can I just kind of quickly say something, what Linda mentioned about pay equity? It is a very important topic. And again, I think this is something we have to do together. And the time is, again, ripe for it. And you probably are all aware that the pay equity ALF resolution, or the ALF resolution, which kind of asked for pay equity in pediatrics, made it into the top 10s. And with more transparency, which hopefully will come around, again, we have to push for it. This hopefully will kind of solve, but it will not be tomorrow. It will also take years.
So it is 90 minutes since we started, and I'm mindful of everyone's time. I know we're all busy. This has been just a fantastic session. Thanks to each and every one of our panelists who spoke about their journey of being a neonatologist and a mother, with all of the joys and all of the challenges. And just to remind everybody that your kids will turn out, they will love you, and you will have done a good job. But that's not to say that we can't make it a little better for each other. So I would encourage you all to get involved with WIN. I put in the chat, email me with suggestions you have, how we could move this conversation forward, how we could help each other, because clearly our work's not done and we have lots that we need to do to help each other and to make it better for the next people, and also to get advice from the people that have been before us. So email me if you have any ideas. This has really been so enlightening for all of us. And whether we have young children, old children, furry children, or no children, we are all facing a lot of the same challenges as neonatologists. So let's work together, help each other. And thank you all for your time. And this will be recorded, so we will send that out. Thanks so much to everybody. Good night or good afternoon.